team. Brilliant.
And the winner is
the America's Got Talent two-night finale, Tuesday and Wednesday on NBC.
You're watching KSEE 24, local news that matters.
But we're heading to the worst part of this heat wave, and the risk for outages is real, and it's immediate.
Rolling blackouts and a vulnerable power grid following a week of record highs in the valley and across the state. California's biggest energy sources can barely withstand the extreme heat. Climate change or bad infrastructure? The North Valley Assemblyman, who's been a critic on some of Newsom's policies, joins me exclusively, and why state lawmakers punted when it came to boosting the state's water supply, and the contentious congressional battle that could decide who secures the power in the House. Democrat Assemblyman and congressional candidate Adam Gray in studio.
There are two standards of justice depending upon your political beliefs. That is deadly in any free society.
Calling out the DOJ and the president. Valley Congressman Tom McClintock on the attack after a series of passionate and fiery speeches from the president. My in-depth exclusive with the Republican representative on what Republicans will do first if they win back the House. Is there a difference between some congressional Republicans and MAGA Republican? And why he says climate change will not be solved by trading in hamburgers for tofu. And our panel of high-profile state journalists ready to weigh in, from the political mudslinging between Rudy Salas and David Valadao to the critical political decisions that await either a signature or a veto from Governor Newsom. Welcome to Sunday. It's KSEE 24 Sunday Morning Matters.
Now, from your local election headquarters, KSEE 24, this is Sunday Morning Matters with your host, Alexon Balakian.
Hey, good Sunday morning. Welcome into an all-new Sunday Morning Matters. Thanks for joining us. I'm Alexon Balakian. Please join the conversation on Twitter at RealAlexon. Use the hashtag Sunday Morning Matters. Now, along the way, former Fresno Mayor Ashley Swearingen will join me in studio after President Biden signs off on a $65 million federal grant to boost the Valley's ag industry. But first, California's power grid on shaky ground as it barely withstood a record heat wave that put the state's energy sources on the brink.
This has been historic, unprecedented, record-breaking week. We started with flex alerts as early as last Wednesday. Had it not been for the efforts of literally millions of Californians just to turn down a light or turn down a thermometer and not use a large appliance, we would not be in the position we are today.
Now, in the midst of this week's heat wave, Governor Newsom praising Californians for responding to the emergency alert sent out to 27 million cell phones to cut the energy use during the heat wave that saw some of the hottest temperatures ever recorded in the month of September here in the Valley. The conservation of energy during a heat wave is on the heels of Newsom and the Air Resources Board approving the sale of new emission-free cars starting in 2035. So from the power grid to a chaotic ending to the legislative session, I want to welcome in back here Assemblyman and also the 13th Congressional District candidate, Adam Gray. Appreciate your time. How are you, sir?
I'm doing real well. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. So let's just start with this. We are the 5th largest economy in the world. And I think a lot of Californians are asking themselves, why do we have to keep conserving energy, set the thermostat 78 and above, turn off appliances between 4 and 9 o'clock, sometimes maybe not charge their electric cars? Why is this happening? Bad infrastructure or more climate change?
Well, I think you can't not comment on the lack of infrastructure investment, right? You know, we've lived off the credit card infrastructure in this country for decades. And, you know, I oftentimes joke here in the Valley, if you're a conservative Republican, you probably don't like high-speed rail. And if you're a liberal Democrat, you might not like the building of a new reservoir. And the only thing they agree on is not building anything at all. And we've had too much of that kind of politics and not enough pragmatic elected officials moving big projects forward.
So have state lawmakers neglected the power grid and sold out to solar and windmills to make renewable energy?
I just think there's been a lack of, you know, practical, pragmatic steps. Right? We make bold, big statements about reductions or increases in renewable energy over decades, but we don't look in a practical sense what can be done this year, what can be done next year, how can we make incremental changes to the system and make those investments in the infrastructure.
Newsom's climate change goals, new emission-free cars starting in 2035. Pipe dream, logical.
Well, I mean, is Governor Newsom going to be governor in 2035? And
no.
Am I going to be in the legislature in 2035? No. Again, we're making big, bold statements. Why don't we just make the investments in tax credits for electric infrastructure and vehicles? Let's encourage the market and let's let the market lead and let's make significant progress here so that we can achieve a goal. It certainly would be a good thing if we can get there, but let's focus on how we get there, not the bold goal.
The climate change goals that were now on Governor Newsom's desk, how is it being paid for? Because the bill of goods sold to the California taxpayer was that some of the state surplus was going to be used for that, maybe $54 billion. What's the truth?
Well, there is a significant amount of the surplus being invested in that, but when we're dealing in the energy infrastructure space, ratepayers absorb most of that cost, right? We have a regulated utility system, and that's where it goes. So when we're making these big investments, we're all paying for them.
Californians were promised relief at the pump months ago. In fact, I think I had you back here in April. We were talking on Zoom at the time. You really called out everybody. You had a plan, everybody had a plan, but nobody seemed to obviously finalize that plan. So now that we finalize it, though, here we are. We're in September now, and no California has seen any relief.
And as you might remember, I was a critic then, and I remain a critic now. I put together a bipartisan coalition, part of the Problem Solvers Caucus here in California, which is a group of equal Democrats and Republicans who were in favor of a gas tax holiday that would have been immediate relief, and instead we ended up with some relief via rebates, tax rebates essentially, that haven't landed in people's bank accounts yet.
When will we see it?
I understand it's supposed to be out here in September and October. Those bureaucracies and agencies that got to get that out the door. That's the problem with doing those kinds of programs versus just doing immediate gas tax suspension. We introduced a bill to do it. We called on people to move it. We had bipartisan support. I'm still frustrated we couldn't get that over the finish line.
Water supply. There was a bill out there, obviously you were in favor of it, where it was to boost it and then also protect the groundwater. It never made it out of the legislature. Why not?
Yeah, water continues to be a contentious issue. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. During my 10 years in office, we've did a bipartisan water bond, the largest in California history. We fought here in the San Joaquin Valley against the implementation and the passage of SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, because we thought it was unfair to our region. And those politics remain difficult to get water across the line, but we've got to do something about it. If you're following what's going on with the Colorado River, the western states, we continue to produce 2/3 of the nation's fruits and vegetables, and if we don't solve this problem, every state in this country is going to be affected. AB
2183, in fact, President Biden had some harsh words for the governor. He said that, he wanted to get that done for the farm workers and for the unions, but it was vetoed initially from Governor Newsom. He has to make a big decision here. One, do you support it? And then two, should he sign it?
I don't support it. I voted against it on several different occasions when it came to the legislature. I don't think the secret ballot's a bad thing. It was originally a very good thing, and the process is in place. I would encourage the governor to veto it now.
I want to finish with this. You're obviously on the campaign trail as well this week. And then, last week I had in your opponent, John Duarte, Republican and farmer, his first time out. I had him on, and he really went in an attack mode on you and some of your policies. This is what he had to say. Listen to this.
And I'll challenge Adam Gray to come and meet me on the real issues. He's the one driving up gas taxes. He's the one driving up the cost of living with his green agenda and his bougie coastal political elite agenda. I am going out there fighting for the cost of living and to make sure that we deliver to the residents of this district, which is a very rural, low-income district, the cost of living control they need to get ahead in life.
So that was just a couple of weeks ago. Your thoughts on that?
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think there's a clear choice in this election. With me, voters get a pragmatist, a centrist, somebody who's going to work with both parties and has a proven track record of doing it, and somebody who's willing to stand up against their own party when their party's wrong. With my opponent, if you're looking for a conservative, MAGA-style, scream and yell and blame all the problems on the other guy kind of candidate, well, that's what you got.
If you're a centrist, do you think you'll have a problem getting some of the progressive vote?
You know, perhaps I'll get challenges the progressive vote. I'm going to go out there and talk about issues that I think matter to progressives, moderates, and conservatives. I've got a proven track record of working with everyone, and that includes progressives. So, you know, could it be a challenge? I'm sure the political speculation may be, but I think I can go out there and earn the vote of progressives, moderates, and conservatives, and I think I've got the track record that they're going to support.
Got to end it there. Assemblyman Adam Gray, thank you so much.
Appreciate the time.
Studio. All right. All right, coming up, from Governor Newsom's strange lack of media availability during a record heat wave to political mudslinging over the airwaves between Rudy Salas and David Valadao, our statewide panel of journalists. Join me next.
15 years of exclusive coverage inside Fresno State. A tradition for Bulldog fans with stories and moments that matter most. The Bulldog Insider tonight on KSEE 24, sponsored by Fashion Furniture.
Flex alert! Flex alert! Power outage is looming.
Oh, that's just alert. He's always getting worked up about something. Flex alerts notify us of preventable power outages. That way we always know when to help stop one.
Okay, Flex, just drop some knowledge on me again.
Okay, I will. I'll turn our thermostat to 78. I'll unplug the blender, the hair dryer.
My blankie?
Yep.
Let's talk about it.
No.
Ooh, you can save the laundry till the morning.
Oh, yes, please. Oh, little things like this help save our power and help save us from outages. With Flex alerts, the power is ours.
Learn more at powersaverrewards.org.
WPE Ministries travels the globe healing the spiritually depressed and sick. We're based in Fresno with free healing programs each month and weekly classes for depression and anger.
God can do what you cannot do. Call us today.
Connections, power, money. That's Sacramento insider Adam Gray. You've paid his salary most of his adult life. His first big job, working for a senator who was indicted for bribery, convicted of fraud, elected to the assembly. Special interests pay for his lifestyle, like jetting off to Hawaii, golfing at Pebble, running for Congress backed by Pelosi's machine. Connections, power, money. For Adam Gray, it's about him, not us. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
When you experience a serious injury at work, it can change your life forever. You may be permanently disabled and unable to provide for your family in the way you always have. Don't trust the insurance company to tell you what your injury is worth. You need someone on your side who fights for you. At Barry Smith & Bartell, we are committed to making sure you can reclaim your life after even the most serious injury. Call us now for a free case assessment. Barry Smith & Bartell, bringing justice to injured workers.
Midland Tractor has a history of partnering with local growers, creating successes as rich as the valley soil. We bring the latest technology to our customers and provide on-site training and startup with the promise to stay until your equipment is performing as it should. Midland Tractor guides and supports through sales and unmatched service from the ground up. We've been committed to grower success for over 40 years. Thanks to you, our story continues. Midland Tractor Equipment Solutions, guaranteed.
KSEE 24 is brought to you in part by ServPro of Clovis, Visalia, Fresno, and Shaver. You're watching Sunday Morning Matters on KSEE 24, your local election headquarters.
Dallas voted with a radical environmentalist to increase the price of gas 73 cents a gallon, hurting families, costing us more. We can't afford Rudy Salas.
I was the only Assembly Democrat to vote no on raising the gas tax. I'm Rudy Salas, and I approve this message because I always honor those who grow our food and produce our gas.
Well, you might have noticed this week, the new ads, Assemblyman Rudy Salas and Congressman David Valadao and their respective party PACs flooding the TV airwaves with a flurry of attack ads, the market cashing in millions just on this race alone. So let the countdown to the midterm begin as the legislative session is officially in the books. We want to say hello to our statewide political journalist this week. Laura Cordy covers state politics for Politico and is a co-author of Politico California Playbook, and Dan Walters, political columnist for Cal Matters, whose newspaper career spans some 60 years. Welcome to you both here. So, all right, guys, midterm races, Congressional District 22, Salas versus Valadao. Who's winning the attack ad battle to this point? Dan, I'll start with you.
Well, I don't know that we can say that anybody's winning anything at this point. You know, we're still a couple of months away from the election. And all these close races in California, these close congressional races, and there's maybe a half dozen of them that are on the docket. They're all going to depend on turnout. What's the turnout going to be in a non-presidential year where there's no top of the ticket battles for governor or senator or anything? This is the real unknown but very important factor in the outcome of all these contested congressional races in California this year. And of course, it's obvious that what happens in California this year could tip the balance of power in the House of Representatives. Republicans need pick up 5 seats, take control. Looked like a sure thing a few weeks ago. Now it's not such a sure thing, according to the most recent polls. So yes, these races and the others in California, particularly in Southern California, could have a decisive impact on who controls Congress for the next 2 years at least.
And Laura, I want to get to you. Obviously, Rudy Salas was endorsed by T.J. Cox. We all know that he has issues with the DOJ at this point, indicted on 28 different charges by the FBI. And I'm wondering, how much does Rudy Salas really need to denounce that endorsement and then also pick up an endorsement in the name of Governor Newsom?
Yeah, the T.J. Cox question is interesting. Shortly after those allegations came out from the federal authorities, Rudy Salas essentially turned around and rejected that endorsement, which I think most political consultants say was the wise thing to do. It's really not a great idea to tie yourself to somebody who's involved in such an expansive corruption case. As far as picking up an endorsement from Gavin Newsom, we'll have to see. I don't know if that would play, if that's critical necessarily in the Central Valley, which doesn't tend to be as Democratic as some areas. Of course, this district is leaning a little bit more Democratic, but Salas has also been really conscious about making sure that voters know that he's worker friendly. I mean, we just heard the ad that he released this week talking about how he values people who produce the food and the oil and the gas in his district. And that needing to kind of speak to those voters has kind of led him to taking some no votes on important climate legislation in recent years. And that's been a big focus of Gavin Newsom's lately. Maybe that's not a deal breaker for Newsom when it comes to endorsing a congressional candidate. At the end of the day, getting Democrats in Congress is really critical for the entire party, but that might be a little bit of a sticking point.
Guys, I want to move on to the legislative session. It ended with such chaos. Hundreds of bills on the governor's desk at this point. He's starting to sign them. I want to know, Dan, I'll start with you. What stood out the most to you as it all ended and it played out the last second of the deadline? Also, the climate change bills, big talker in Sacramento. What do you make of how it all played out once it was all said and done?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're breaking up a little bit. So I didn't know you were talking to me. Well, I don't know there was any more chaos at the end of this session than there usually is. Probably a little bit less. We've seen some more chaotic sessions than this one. There was a last-minute flurry of legislation because the governor wanted some environmental bills, some climate change bills, and he got, I think, basically all but one. Wasn't quite sure he really wanted that one. Anyway, are they important? I suppose they are if they really have the kind of long-term effect that he assumes that they will have, but we really won't know the outcome of these things until he's out of the governorship. It's one thing to legislate saying we're going to have, say, 100% renewable electric energy by 2045, but it's another thing to actually make that happen. We just saw this week how really kind of precarious California's power situation is. When we set a record on Tuesday for power demand, 52,000 megawatts, renewables were only accounting for about a quarter of that. Half of that energy was coming from natural gas-fired generators. So we're saying that over the next 13 years, by 2035, those will be mostly eliminated. We're supposed to be 90% renewable by 2035, only 13 years from now. and the renewables are only now maybe a quarter of what we need on a hot day like that. It's one thing to legislate it. It's another thing to make it happen.
Dan, and Laura, I want to come to you now because we did see maybe some bizarre radio silence. Both of you cover the governor on a daily basis. It was kind of radio silence there when you guys asked to talk to him, but he had that impromptu press conference in Los Angeles during this unprecedented heat wave. And then we saw him in a weird social media video message where he was wearing a sweater or some kind of fleece. What do you make of that as you guys cover him every single day, and then it didn't seem like you can get a hold of him?
You know, it's hard to know exactly what the governor is thinking, but as you said, there was this emergency going on, and he was delivering messages via social media. These were pre-recorded messages, so there's not a press corps in person that can ask him questions. We like to ask him difficult questions sometimes, and that was noted on the day of the peak heat emergency. And his office said at the time, told another reporter, he's too busy handling the emergency response to hold a media conference. And the next day, we still had flex alerts going on. It wasn't the hottest day of the heat emergency.
Make a national name for himself. Nationally and wind up on CNN, MSN, all these places. And the best way to avoid doing that is just not do it, not to put yourself in that position. And particularly on an issue as touchy as blackouts or the potential of blackouts, because no matter what he said, if we had blackouts, he's the one that's going to take the political heat for it.
All right,
and it's just probably smart politics not to get involved.
Dan and Laura, I got to cut it there as our time goes quick here. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit more of that statewide insight. Appreciate you guys so much. All right, coming up, calling out the president and the DOJ. Valley Republican Congressman Tom McClintock joins me exclusively in studio for
liberty, constitutionally limited government, and personal responsibility produced the most prosperous and free fuel. You see rising crime, rampant homelessness, and ultimately failing businesses and fleeing families. Everywhere they have taken control, that's what they produce.
Now you're talking about the Socialist Party, and a lot of them are about last campaign speeches that he made. Is there a difference?
Enough attention.
I want to just clarify there because, Biden, this is what Biden says, and I want to give you your chance to respond. The president says not all congressional Republicans are MAGA Republicans. So how would you, I don't know if there's a classification. Are you with Trump mostly here, and that's a MAGA Republican, as they call it? Or are you just a congressional Republican?
I supported the policies that produced the economic prosperity that we enjoyed under Donald Trump. I think what Biden was referring to is the 75 million Americans who voted for Donald Trump in the last election. He thinks that they're extremists. I think that his policies have been the extremist policies, and we're living with the result today. And the whole question in this election comes down to the same question that Ronald Reagan asked in 1980. Are you better off today than we were 4 years ago? I think everybody knows in their own lives the answer to that question. And the follow-up question to that is, do you want to continue down the path we're on right now, or do you want to restore the policies that produce prosperity for our country?
I think, and just clarify this, because I think a lot of people are saying, whether it's a MAGA Republican or Republican, those who stormed the Capitol, the rioters, they were holding up MAGA signs, and MAGA flags and MAGA hats.
What they did was an abomination. It was a disgrace. We ought to throw the book at them. They interfered with one of the most important constitutional processes that we have, the counting of electoral votes. I've got no sympathy for that whatsoever. But I also question whether all of the rioters throughout the spring and summer of 2020 that burned our cities, killed dozens of citizens, did millions of dollars of economic damage, why aren't they being treated the same way? Why aren't we also throwing the book at them? And that really is one of the things that disturbs me the most about this new leftist regime that's taken hold in Washington. There are two standards of justice depending upon your political beliefs. That is deadly in any free society.
I want to get to what Senator Lindsey Graham said, and this had to do with the FBI seizure of the top secret documents at Mar-a-Lago. He said this, quote, this is what he said, I'll say this, if there's a prosecution of Donald Trump for mishandling classified information after the Clinton debacle, there will be riots in the streets. Now, he's kind of walked that back a little bit.
I wouldn't put it in those terms, but I think that his concern is still valid, and that is a double standard of justice. You had Hillary Clinton, who had no independent power to declassify documents, take 30,000 documents, including some of the most closely guarded secrets of our government, place them on a personal server with less security than a Gmail account. That offense is ignored. But Donald Trump, who as president has the plenary authority to declassify any documents. He has the plenary authority to possess any documents.
But he's not allowed to take them out of Washington.
But
or the White House.
Don't forget. Well, that is a matter of you know, this is going to be litigated. The point is, this was a dispute over records. Who had claimed the physical possession of those records, and yet they do an armed raid on his house. Again, a double standard there that is always seems to bend in the same direction.
I want to finish with this before we take a quick break, but you know, there's been this talk. Once Republicans take back the House in November, there will be investigations. I want to hear from you right now. If the Republicans take back the House, will you guys investigate Hunter Biden? And number two, will you move to impeach or start the process of impeachment against President Biden?
Well, first of all, impeachment is for treason, bribery, or other high crimes or misdemeanors. I've not seen any of that.
Okay,
so I would certainly hope
there's
not.
a narrative out there.
I know that, but I don't think that's a widely held narrative.
Okay.
With respect to investigations, I think our top priority is going to be to restore the economic prosperity that we produced under Donald Trump by cutting taxes, rolling back regulations until we get the economy fixed and our borders secured. We haven't even talked about that, but I mean the fact that 3 million foreign nationals have been allowed to illegally enter our country and be settled at taxpayer expense in contravention of our immigration laws. Those are the things that need to be addressed first.
Well, we're going to talk about that and a lot more. The congressman nice enough to stick around for a second segment. So coming up, why the congressman says fighting wildfires is not as easy as riding your bike to work or replacing hamburgers with tofu. We'll talk about that.
Building a legacy takes hard work, straight talk, earning trust, not just asking for it. Renewable Solar. We've earned the trust of hundreds of customers.
Repairs just what's required. Saving you time, money, and water. And we're the nation's leader in finding and repairing spa and pool leaks. American Leak Detection. Call or visit our website.
Connections, power, money. That's Sacramento insider Adam Gray. You've paid his salary most of his adult life. His first big job. Getting off to Hawaii, golfing at Pebble, running for Congress backed by Pelosi's machine. Connections, power, money. For Adam Gray, it's about him, not us. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Get local news that matters and certified accurate forecasts at the new YourCentralValley.com. Now scroll while you watch with quick access to news important to you. Connect with your community with the very latest local stories. KSEE 24 News is always available at YourCentralValley.com.
This ultimately is a forest management issue. And this problem is not going to go away even if we all ride our bikes to work and substitute tofu for hamburgers.
And that was Congressman Tom McClintock addressing elected officials and hundreds more at the annual Lake Tahoe Summit. Congressman McClintock, nice enough to stick around a little bit longer. Appreciate that. So let's get to that. That was really a big climate change kind of summit, if you will. U.S. Senator Alex Padilla was there. Even Governor Newsom was in attendance. What was the response following that comment that basically says climate change is not responsible for California's massive wildfires?
Well, I think more and more people are realizing that this is a question of forest management, that we have allowed our forests to become catastrophically overgrown, and like any overcrowded population, the trees ultimately succumb to disease, pestilence, drought, and ultimately catastrophic wildfire. That's the way nature gardens. We decided a century ago that our forests were worth protecting and preserving. So instead of allowing nature to burn out the excess timber, we decided to carry it out. And we had a thriving timber industry for nearly a century, healthy, resilient, fire-resistant forests, thriving local economies, and until the environmental laws of the 1970s made forest management all but impossible. I mean, I'd put it to you this way. You can literally tell the boundary line between the public lands, which we are no longer allowed to effectively manage because of the environmental laws, and the private lands, which are still effectively managed. You can literally tell the difference simply by the condition of the forest on each side of the boundary line. How clever of the climate
but
to
that's
know
more
the exact
federal land,
boundaries,
right? That's
to
more
know the
federal
exact
land.
boundaries between the federal lands, which we can no longer manage, and private lands, which we can. And again, the private lands are in good condition. The federal lands are in terrible condition, and the only difference is the laws that apply to each.
I want to get to a couple of other things here when it comes to what Democrats are calling climate change. And the Air Resources Board just voted and will begin the process of emission-free cars, brand new cars, starting in 2035. Brand new gas-powered cars in California, you'll have to go out of state to get those in 2035. Is this doable? Is this a smart idea?
The question I would ask them is, where in the world do you think all of this electricity for your electric cars is coming from? 80% comes from the very fossil fuels you're trying to shut down. The irony is that within days of making the announcement that you can only buy electric cars in California starting in 2035, they're also begging you not to charge your electric cars because we don't have enough electricity to do both. Why? Because we made a commitment to wind and solar, which is entirely inadequate to run a modern economy.
And that's because right now we're in the middle of a heat wave, and so we're on a flex alert. You know, I wanted to
we've had heat waves in this state for generations. We only started running into problems after the renewable mandates went in that have made it impossible for us to generate the electricity as necessary. I mean, we used to have hydroelectric dams, nuclear power plants, gas-fired turbines that were producing some of the cleanest, cheapest electricity on this planet until the environmental left took over our policy. Now we have the highest electricity prices in the continental United States, gasoline that costs $2 typically more than the national average, and natural gas costs that have gone off the scale. This is all a question of public policy. I mean, I remember the debates in the 1960s over whether we ought to do away with electricity meters because electricity was becoming too cheap to meter. But that's when we were building hydroelectric dams. Now the left is tearing them down. We were building nuclear power plants. Now the left is decommissioning them. And what are they replacing them with? Wind and solar, which are entirely inadequate to run a modern economy.
I want to finish with this. We got about a minute, and I really wanted to get this in because we've been talking about water. As you know, we're in the midst of yet another drought, probably the biggest one we've seen yet. Project Nexus in Turlock, I'm sure you're familiar with this, where a 2-mile stretch of canals will be blanketed by solar panels in hopes to create renewable energy. Scientists say it's going to work. Your Democrat colleague Jim Costa pushing this as well. Can this work? Because right now
I'm highly skeptical. You know, look, it comes down to this: droughts are nature's fault; they happen. But water shortages are our fault. Water shortages are a choice we made a generation ago, when the same environmental laws that prevent us from effectively managing our forests also make it all but impossible to build new dams. We haven't built a new major reservoir in this state since the New Melones was completed in 1979. Meanwhile, the population has doubled. We are not going to solve our water shortages until we build more reservoirs, and we can't build more reservoirs until we change those laws.
So you will not vote. You will vote no on this.
I don't know. I'm skeptical of it. I'm still. I'm reserving judgment, but I am skeptical.
All right, Congressman McClintock, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Coming up, a $65 million boost to take the Central Valley's ag industry into the next generation. What this record federal funding will specifically do for farmers and farm workers. Former Fresno Mayor Ashley Swearingen joins me next.
Join Planet Fitness today and get more epic energy and better sleep with tons of equipment in our clean and spacious clubs. Join for $1 down, $10 a month, cancel anytime. Deal ends Wednesday, September 14th.
Most politicians only hurt you when they vote. The worst, like Rudy Salas, hurt you even when they don't. Salas skipped multiple votes to suspend the gas tax, denying relief to average Californians. But Salas did vote to spend our money promoting things like elite golf courses and five-star resorts. Places like where Salas was pampered on special interest trips. Votes when it suits him, doesn't care if he hurts you. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
First Steps Recovery Outpatient Program really is just that, the first steps.
Not everyone needs an inpatient program or to go to the hospital.
First Steps meant starting my recovery from home.
First Steps meant not having to choose between my job or recovering.
First Steps Recovery offered online programs that fit my schedule.
I'm so grateful for the First Steps Recovery Outpatient Program.
If you or a loved one needs help recovering from addiction, call First Steps Recovery today and take the first step.
First Steps Recovery saved my life.
You can start your day wanting an all-natural pregnancy and end it wanting an epidural. It's called being human. A human who takes care of their eyes, then stares at their phone, who embraces self-care and believes beauty is worth some pain. So go ahead and do your 10-step skincare routine and make the 11th sun. Teach your kids that aging is beautiful while trying to prevent it. With traditional medicine and alternative remedies, there's no wrong way to treat life at Rite Aid. And now get your flu shot with easy scheduling, fast appointments, plus walk-ins available daily.
I am here.
I am here. I am here because our graduates
Get good paying jobs.
I am here.
I am here. I am here because they provide free food, tutoring, and laptops.
I am here because they help me with childcare.
I am here because I didn't have to pay for tuition.
My tuition was free.
The State Center Community College District has been helping students for more than a century. You could be here too. Contact us today.
We are here because of the colleges at State Center Community College District.
Join Planet Fitness today and get more epic energy and better sleep with tons of equipment in our clean and spacious clubs. Join for $1 down, $10 a month, cancel anytime. Deal ends Wednesday, September 14th.
Central California's most accurate forecast every day on KSEE 24.
They're going to empower agricultural workers in Fresno, California.
A $65 million investment into the Valley's ag industry for generations to come. Last Friday, President Biden awarding the Fresno Merced Future of Food Innovation Initiative an historic payout with a federal grant. The Valley just one of 21 other regions to be part of a $1 billion investment from the Biden administration and the U.S. Department of Commerce. There were 530 applicants, 60 finalists, and the F3 Coalition was again one of the 21 nationwide to be awarded the $65 million, all part of the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. A big part of that coalition, the Central Valley Community Foundation, President and CEO, former Fresno Mayor Ashley Swearingen is here. So good to have you back here on Sunday Morning Matters. So, hey, this is big. $65 million. The money's going to be distributed. How will it be the game changer of the Central Valley?
Oh my gosh, I have to tell you, this is such a big deal for our community and our region. I feel like we just won the Super Bowl in this weird little tiny world of economic development. So really what you got to think about is how do we as a region move forward with making sure we have higher quality jobs, that those jobs are available to the people who live here already. We're not bringing in talent from elsewhere. We want the people who live here to benefit. We want to invent new things, create new businesses, and the businesses that are here in the ag sector, we want those small farms to be able to grow their businesses here. So that $65 million plus other funding the state has provided all gets wrapped up into one big package to support those activities.
Give me the behind the scenes a little bit as you guys knew that you were going to enter this challenge, obviously, and then putting it together, knowing the major players involved. And I know you don't want to say politics gets involved, but it's a little political because the president made the announcement.
Yeah, but also I don't think the president gains anything from choosing the Central Valley. We were the #1 award in the entire country. I would expect if politics were at play that would have been a swing state or a swing region. There's nothing but navy blue all around us in California. So I really think it was the merits of the application, and people came together from farm worker organizations, working alongside small farms, working alongside large farms, working alongside community colleges, universities. I think people are just so desperate for change and for things to be different in the Central Valley that we have this incredible coalition, and people are willing to talk and do things differently, and that attracted the attention of the president.
And you know as well as anybody, right, because we have to innovate because of the drought, the water storage issues, the water wars that have been going on around us. So give me a little sense of how farmers and farm workers will benefit.
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you think about it today, already, as you mentioned, we have resource constraints, whether it is labor, whether it's environmental constraints, that's making it more and more difficult to produce food sustainably here in the Central Valley, but that's true around the country and around the world. So today, farmers, let's say in South Fresno County, are buying technology and equipment from Chile and France and Italy and all these places around the world, shipping it over here and then putting it to use in their farm in Reedley, California. That machinery, that technology, that software, all of that thinking and ingenuity and innovation should be invented right here, because the jobs that get created to support that kind of innovation should go to people who are paying the hardest price and the biggest price to deliver fresh quality food today.
Give me the tangibles of this. When will you actually start seeing the money and start seeing those dollars at work?
Yeah, well, I think we're going to be under contract here pretty soon. Our major partners here are UC Merced, Fresno State, community colleges, UC Ag and Natural Resources, and a host of small CBOs. So they'll get the dollars directly. I want to be clear, those dollars don't come to the Community Foundation. We are supporting this big group to do what they do so well. And it's 4 years they have to spend the money, run these programs, and see the results on the ground.
As mayor, you're a two-term mayor, you've done some big things. Where would you rank this, though?
This is right up there. This is like Fulton Street grand reopening, October 2017, right about that level. It took, you know, that project took every minute of every day of 9 years. This project, getting this award, has taken 20+ years. It has taken things like Fresno State growing and building its capacity, having a new UC campus here, having these agricultural associations being willing to work with maybe groups they haven't worked with in the past, farm worker organizations being willing to sit at the table and speak into that innovation. All of that has been bubbling for over 20, my whole career, over 20 years. So yeah, it's a big deal.
I have a few seconds left, and I would really be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about the South Stadium project. That was something on the tail end of your mayorship, if you will, and obviously it was voted down, you know that. But give me a sense of what do you make of that decision and also the continued struggle of revitalizing downtown?
You know, honestly, I don't know the specifics today of that project and what the right decision would have been, so I don't want to speak to that. But I will say this emphatically. There is no future for Fresno, Clovis, for Fresno County, for the entire Central Valley. There is no positive future for this region except that our downtown is vibrant, inclusive, and active, and a place where people want to be. So every decision, every day, that is being made, not just by the city of Fresno, but by transportation planning agencies, surrounding governments, every single entity involved in running our local communities needs to be invested in the success of downtown Fresno. And that's not changing. That was true before I was mayor. That's true today. That's going to be true tomorrow, and so on and so on. We have to get this right.
All right, Ashley Swearingen. Good, so good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Refreshing conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Coming up, the unusual move City Council is making prior to Council President's first court appearance involving his felony charge of attempted extortion.
Education matters at KSEE 24, and we're dedicated to bringing you inspirational stories of students finding new ways to strive for success. Watch these Education Matters stories now at yourcentralvalley.com. Just click Education.
Here in the Central Valley, it matters who's with us. And now that the Supreme Court has overturned 50 years of women having the right to choose, allowing politicians to outlaw abortion even in the case of rape, John Duarte definitely is not with us. Politician John Duarte. If he gets to Congress, Duarte will vote for partisan leaders in Washington who've pledged a nationwide ban on every woman's right to abortion. John Duarte. He's with them, not the Central Valley. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
For 75 years, Whitey's Pets has been helping you find your new best friend. We carry leading brands of dog and cat food at great prices. Our expert staff will help, whether you're just starting out or have years of schooling. Whitey's carries all the supplies and accessories your new friend needs to be happy and healthy. Shy friends, furry friends, slippery friends, friendly friends. Whitey's Pets, open every day. The best service and selection for 75 years. Say, how long is that in dog years?
Your life is important. Your family and your community count on you every day. But when you are hurt on the job, all of that can be taken from you. That's why you need Barry Smith and Bartell. Our attorneys understand how devastating a workplace injury can be and are dedicated to helping you secure the benefits you deserve. Call today and let us get you back to what's most important, your life. Barry Smith and Bartell, bringing justice to injured workers.
Serving part-time in the Army National Guard has led to a lot of firsts for me. It paid for me to be the first person in my family to go to school and graduate debt-free. That education helped me get to the first day at my career, a job that I can still hold while I serve part-time. That job and the home loan benefits I got from my service helped me buy my first home. And I take pride knowing I will be the first to respond if my community ever needs me. To learn more, visit nationalguard.com.
Midland Tractor has a history of partnering with local growers. We bring the latest technology to our customers and provide on-site training and startup with the promise to stay until your equipment is performing as it should. Midland Tractor Equipment Solutions, guaranteed.
In a rare and very suspicious move, the City Council canceling their scheduled Thursday meeting just days before Council President Nelson Esparza's arraignment on a felony charge of attempted extortion. Esparza confirming with me the council meeting scheduled for September 15th is canceled due to 4 of the 7 council members not able to attend. Miguel Arias, Tyler Maxwell, and Esparza did sign off on the cancellation. It comes as Esparza will be arraigned on September 20th for 1 felony count of attempted extortion and also violating the city charter. It's still unclear if taxpayer dollars will be used to fund Esparza's criminal defense. It has been discussed in closed session, but nothing has been made public. Now on Tuesday, a Fresno County judge will decide which argument opposing Measure C will be printed in the voter guide for November's midterm. The Fresno County Clerk, James Coos, decided to go with the opposing argument submitted by the Libertarian Party, but it was turned in first. A No on Measure C coalition filed a petition to the court. Measure C is the near $7 billion sales tax measure that, if voted in by a supermajority, would extend the Fresno County transportation tax for another 30 years through 2057. Up next, a tribute to the Queen. It's our tweet of the week.
Connections, power, money. That's Sacramento insider Adam Gray. You've paid his salary most of his adult life. His first big job, working for a senator who was indicted for bribery, convicted of fraud, elected to the assembly. Special interests pay for his lifestyle, like jetting off to Hawaii, golfing at Pebble, running for Congress backed by Pelosi's machine. Connections, power, money. For Adam Gray, it's about him, not us. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
While David Valadeo's living the high life, he's leaving us behind. Valadeo's family company took hundreds of thousands in government relief money, but he voted against helping families during the pandemic and raising the minimum wage. Valadeo raked in millions, but voted against capping insulin prices and cutting the gas tax. Valadeo even voted against bringing down grocery prices while we're feeling squeezed. David Valadeo, out for himself, not us. DCCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Major wildfires can happen anytime. You need to be ready to evacuate early before the fire gets too close. Review your 5-minute plan and figure out multiple escape routes. Pre-pack essentials ahead of time and keep an eye on the fire weather updates. Most importantly, don't wait for the evacuation orders. By leaving early, you avoid congestion and help firefighters respond. Go early and stay safe. Your California firefighters are on your side.
Experience some of the greatest planes in history up close and in person at Castle Air Museum. Stroll around the 70 aircraft on display while enjoying the best our valley has to offer at the Corks and Kegs Wine and Beer Festival, Saturday, September 24th from 5 to 9. $35 gets you in for wine and beer tasting, and $45 adds a tour of presidential aircraft. There will be music and food vendors too. Tickets available on Eventbrite. Call us or check our website for details. Make a visit to Castle Air Museum and come be amazed.
For millions of people in America, a daily meal isn't a choice between different dishes. It's a choice between food and other crucial needs, like medicine, electricity, or childcare. Food shouldn't be an impossible choice. Now you have a choice too. How will you choose to end hunger? Join the fight to end hunger this September during Hunger Action Month.
WPE Ministries travels the globe healing the spiritually depressed and sick. We're based in Fresno with free healing programs each month and weekly classes for depression and anger.
God can do what you cannot do. Call us today.
Finally, our tweet of the week, and a tribute to the only true queen of our lifetime. This tweet from the royal family Thursday morning. The queen died peacefully at the Balmoral this afternoon. The king and the queen consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Queen Elizabeth II, the world's oldest and longest serving head of state, came to the throne in 1952 at the age of 25. Her reign, 70 years, spanning 15 prime ministers, starting with Winston Churchill, rubbed elbows with 13 sitting U.S. presidents. Her Majesty had us all watching in awe, from the royal weddings to her platinum jubilee. President Biden saying Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II was more than a monarch. She defined an era. But maybe Queen Elizabeth II had made the most profound and poignant statement for us following 9/11, which just so happens today marks the 21st anniversary of that dark day in history. The Queen said, "Grief is the price we pay for love." Queen Elizabeth II was 96 years old.
Most politicians only hurt you when they vote. The worst, like Rudy Salas, hurt you even when they don't. Salas skipped multiple votes to suspend the gas tax, denying relief to average Californians. But Salas did vote to spend our money promoting things like elite golf courses and 5-star resorts. Places like where Salas was pampered on special interest trips. Votes when it suits him, doesn't care if he hurts you. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Medicare benefits, Medicare supplemental plans or Advantage plans, Medicare prescription drug plans. How are you supposed to understand it all? At Valley Caregiver Resource Center, we know Medicare can be confusing. That's why we offer HICAP, the Health Insurance Counseling and Advocacy Program. With open enrollment beginning October 15th, our HICAP counselors will help you understand your options. And assistance is free, objective, and confidential. Call Valley Caregiver Resource Center now to make your appointment with our trained experts. We're here to help.
Clean, safe, and reliable water. For State Senator Melissa Hurtado, it's a basic right for every family and farm. So she's doing the hard work across party lines to improve our water infrastructure.
Senator Hurtado is teaming up with her colleagues from both sides of the aisle to fix the canal.
$130 million a year to make sure that water is accessible.
Clean, safe, and reliable water for families and farms. State Senator Melissa Hurtado. She's all Valley.
For millions of people in America, a daily meal isn't